Okay. So this conversation we had with my sister yesterday, oh my God, this was so fascinating.
2 hour conversation.
So fascinating.
It was wild.
So
I have to check that.
yeah, Elka's getting lunch ready. So as I mentioned on one of my lives, we're going to do Joe Dispenza course in October, the end of October. And it's a 7-day course. I mean, it's a full immersion, right? And he does a lot with meditations and getting you to get outside of your quote unquote reality to go into this place of nothingness. And so you're really attuned with your own body. All right. And you're not using anything from the outside environment or anything else. So you really get in tune with your body. Anyhow, so one of his catchphrases, all these famous speakers got their catchphrase, like Zig Ziglar, help enough people get what they want, and you get to have everything in life that you want, right? Or the one we use for Kiyosaki. So there's these little quips. Dispenza's quip is this, and it goes along with this, what I was just talking about with Think and Grow Rich. Again, these guys, whether they read James Allen or not, believe me, James Allen nailed this back in the late 1800s. And Joe's is the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel develops your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. All right. So, how you think, act, and feel creates your personality, and your personality creates your personal reality. That's his big thing, right? So, what does that mean? That means that and you can use, and this is what took so long for my sister to grasp. She couldn't grasp the concept. But the more we talked about it and shared different stories trying to help her relate it, all of a sudden, man, the freaking light bulb started going off like crazy for her. It was wild, absolutely wild to witness. So let's talk about something in the past that you were not necessarily unhappy, dissatisfied with, although that's the easiest to recall, but something where you were in a life situation, or your situation around life was this. You wanted it to be different. You didn't know how to go about it. And then years later, all of a sudden, as you reflect back, your situation now is different. How you think, how you act, how you feel towards that situation is different. But you're not really sure how you went from point A to point B. All right. So take a 15-second reflection, think of something, and maybe it's like, it could be a job. I was really unhappy with this job. It wasn't fulfilling me, blah, 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 blah. It could be money situation. It could be a house. It could be a car. It could be a family. It could be a partner. Something along those lines. I'm going to shut up for 10 to 15 seconds. I'll watch the clock. So you can reflect on something because this is going to help make this concept of what we're going to talk about even easier. I'm shutting up in 2, 1, now. That was exactly 15 seconds. So think about switching for 30, right? Or a minute. It's long, right? So anyhow, 15 seconds to come up with something. So what does he mean by think, act, and feel? If think, act, and feel creates your personality, and if you need to change your personal reality, right? You're trying to change something in your situation. What did I just leave out of that quip? Your personality. So your personality needs to change in order to create something different in your life. When we think about network marketing, right? We talk about the comfort zone. We talk about, and I will admit, Elke and we've been living in a sort of comfort zone, right? But reality has hit us square in the face where it would have been nice if we hadn't rested in our comfort zone and had really aggressively been building Sealy. So we were at a C10 and had all that money coming in right now, given the situation that we've recently faced a month ago. So whatever it is, comfort zones keep us in our personality. Would you at least agree with that?
Mhm.
right? There's no stretching, there's no growing. You're just happy being who you are. And there's not necessarily anything
There's
wrong
nothing
with
wrong with
that.
that.
Understand the context of the conversation,
Mhm.
right? Because that's where Leah was. Leah's like, well, I'm happy. I've got my apartment. I do as much as I can for my kids. I enjoy my job. She's happy where she's at,
Mhm.
right? But that there's nothing wrong with that. But I said, okay, Leah, if you had $10 million sitting in the bank account right now, would anything change?
Would you be different?
How would you be looking at different things in a new way? Would things change? Would you be thinking about things differently? Would you be acting in a different way? And would you feel differently? If you had $10 million sitting in the bank, say, rather than, I don't know, 10, 50, 100,000, how would you answer that question? I personally think, yes, I would definitely think, act, and feel differently. Doesn't mean I'm changing who I am on the inside,
From a character.
right? We're not talking about that, but we are talking about her niece or her daughter, Jenny, or her son-in-law, Zach, needs an emergency operation because they're both got health challenges,
Wheelchairs.
right? And their health care, they don't have the health care to challenge it. It's going to be a $150,000 operation with where she's, and I'm just using this as examples, with say $50,000 in the bank, you'd have to take out a loan in order to make that happen. But if you had $10 million in the bank, you wouldn't even have to think twice. Here's a check, let's do this. So would you think, act, and feel differently with those different amounts of money in the bank? Absolutely. For sure you would. And so, who are you from a personality standpoint then, different with the $10 million sitting in the bank versus the $50,000 in this bank? All right. So, think, act, and feel. That's where a lot of these other gurus start talking about imagining, right? And affirmations,
Visualizing.
visualizing. Now, Joe Dispenza is not into visualizing
At
at
all.
all. He says, you will never hear me use that term. But there's a lot of people that do teach that, and it absolutely works for a lot of people, right? We're with Joe, he's going at this from a completely different standpoint. We can't really, um, unless you study Joe to understand. I mean, it'd be a whole course in itself, right? So, but a lot of people are familiar, especially from the books that we've been reading, and as a man thinketh, will correlate with this concept that putting yourself, who would you be if you were a C6? Who would you be as a C8? Who would you be as a C10? I can tell you from personal experience, and we've heard it from some of the other team members, Daniel is not the same person he was 4 years ago when he joined this company.
That's right.
I can absolutely guarantee it. I have seen it firsthand from the first time I met him to the last time I met him. He is not the same personality.
He's grown.
And I would say the same thing for Davide, right? So spend some time imagining, envisioning you are a C6, a C8, whatever your personal goal is, and you have not $1,000 or $500 or $5,000 coming in monthly, but you have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 coming in monthly. How would that affect how you think, act, and feel in different situations that you can dream up right now? You can use current situations that you're going through or facing with your current situation. And then imagine I'm a C8 and I have 15,000. C9 is about 20 grand a month or more. All right. So C8, let's just say it's 15 grand. How would it be to C8 on a monthly basis, recurring basis, having that 15,000 coming in versus with Sealy versus what it is now? How would you think, act, and feel differently given those two different situations? And I think with that, it can
Especially
kind
the
of, you
feeling.
can start, yeah, with the feeling, right? Think, act, and
Especially the
feel.
feeling.
And that's what a lot of people talk about. That's what the Bible talks about as well. This is all biblical. Jesus talks about all this, maybe not with these words, but
Mhm.
if you study Jesus and his teachings, this is what he's teaching, right? And the faith of a mustard seed. You have to believe it. You have to see it. You have to feel it, right? And so maybe with that little exercise, it can help you in developing new affirmations. It can help you in developing when you go into a meditation and you start thinking and envisioning the future, seeing it from that other perspective, that
And
other
feeling
quote
it
unquote personality, as Joe talks about it.
as you are already there.
Anything you want to talk about
Yeah,
on that,
like
Elka?
basically,
Because she's a little bit ahead in our,
basically seeing it as it is finished. Like it really is like, okay, I want to be a C8. Oh, it would be nice to be a C8. I am a C8. What does that feel like? What do I do different? I have a different step in my step. My shoulders are probably a little more up in the meeting. I maybe have a little bit more excitement and joy because I achieved that goal. Yeah, those are all outside things, but yet you will show up different. Just like anything else. You already did this in your life in other situations. You've already done this many times, but sometimes we forget that, and that's another good thing to kind of think of something where you already done this many times over, where you reach something, you're like, yeah, I said I was going to do it and I reached it. And yes, I'm different. That thing made me different. Just being a mother. I never had a child myself, but becoming a mother, you change, So yeah,
and
that's
then
my two
I
cents.
like using Jack's example too, because I grew up with Jack and I knew who Jack was. And then what Jack became. Jack was a bit of a rebel, all right? Let's just leave it at that.
And then he became a
And
cop.
then he became a cop, right? So there was a Jack before being a cop, and there was a Jack after being a cop, but there was this transition period where he began thinking, acting, and feeling differently and he reinvented his personality in several ways. Now, he didn't change who he was in his core center. He
Mhm.
is still an unbelievable, loving individual who cares about people, who loves people, who sees good in other people, right? So that part didn't change, along with all his other great attributes. But there
Mhm.
was something else that did change to allow him to become a cop. So, and not only just a cop, but a leader in the police force. So
Mhm.
when you think that's those examples I was talking about in the very beginning, think of something before, think of something later, and what happened in between, and who were you before and who are you now. And what we're wanting to do is to accelerate this to the next step in your Sealy career with what does it take? I watched something, it was unbelievably well done. I was going to share it to Sealy guy, but I don't think I did. Maybe I did. But I'm going to try to see if I can strip it and I'll share it, put it up on trainings. It's like how do you act when you enter a room?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's done with stick figures, but it's beautifully done. And it is absolutely so true. And
Mhm.
I've made other posts. Brad talks about, charisma, right? When you walk into a room, you sense charisma. A person either has it or a
Or they
person
don't.
doesn't. And I will tell you, every single professional network marketer that's made it big
Has
walks
it.
into a room, has charisma. And they maybe never studied charisma or anything like that, but they have it. And it's probably because of what we're talking about, how they think, act, and feel has changed. That
Mhm.
change created a new personality now that when they enter a room, they have charisma. Maybe before they didn't.
Mhm.
This little stick video thing I thought it was
You
fantastic.
posted it on Facebook, I think, on
Did I put,
Sealy.
it's probably on Sealy Guy. I think that's why I was debating, and I said, screw it. And I posted it. So that's where you can find it is on Sealy Guy. And I encourage you to watch. It's like 5 minutes, 7 minutes long. And those are those things, right? So if you feel like you walk into a room and nobody pays attention to you, well, what could you do as far as think, act, and feel differently so that people do recognize you when you walk into a room? All right. One of the things I remember about Jack that was a big influence on me, yep, there it is. A big influence on me when we were growing up. Now, Jack is in the same grade as my sister, so they're 3 years ahead. He's a senior. I'm a freshman in high school, for instance, right? But Jack was a major influencer with other people. He had that type of charisma. He walked into a room and people noticed Jack. He made heads turn. He didn't do anything to make that happen. It was how he carried himself. It was his belief in himself, right? So and that was one of the things that always inspired me about Jack. He was a natural born leader in that realm. Leader of who and what we are is a whole nother story, maybe, but he was a natural born leader, all right, because he had that within himself. He didn't work at it. He didn't study Joe Dispenza. He didn't study Napoleon Hill. For him, it came as a very natural way of being, all right. It's not going to be for everybody, but I encourage you to watch that video because it will highlight what I'm trying to get at through this whole little teaching. And then as we move into as a man thinketh, maybe all of this will make a little bit more sense to you because again, it's a very differently written book, but it's another one that you talk to any self-made entrepreneur, they're going to tell you, yeah, I've read that book. And I still would encourage you because see, I
Yeah,
wasn't a reader. I mean, maybe you guys don't know this, gals, but
I'm gonna.
I was not a reader. I
Mm-mm.
could not read a page without being narcoleptic. I would fall asleep. I maybe get through 3 pages. I hadn't really read a book. And Brad, when we started working under his mentorship, very in the very beginning, before we were personal friends or anything like that, but Brad, he had a book of the month club for his team, and he harped and harped and harped on the importance of reading. And I'm like, well, if Brad is saying this and I want to have what Brad has, then
Mhm.
I ought to start doing what Brad says to do. So I forced myself, and it took about 5 years, literally 5 years of constant effort before I actually fell in love with reading again
Mhm.
and could read a book. 5 years, think about that. That's a long time, Janine. It didn't happen overnight for me. Some people are avid readers and it's no big deal. But I wanted what Brad had so badly that I was willing to do what he was teaching. And so I would read, okay, I can't read 15 minutes a day. It's impossible for me, but I could read a minute, right?
While he's
I could read
in the
30
bathroom.
seconds. I could read maybe 2 minutes. And then maybe I made it to 5 minutes and
Mhm.
eventually made it to 10 minutes. And eventually I made it to 15 minutes a day. All right. So my point is, if you want something different, and Janine, maybe you don't. Maybe you're perfectly happy where you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. Believe me, I saw how I started this. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are looking to grow, you have to enter that fear thing, right? And you have to find a time. You schedule the time then. If you're too busy, then you schedule the time. 5 minutes a day at this hour, nobody, no distractions, no nothing. This is when I'm going to do this, just like we're doing with the lives, right? So it's just my view on it. And I've been there where I wasn't a reader, but I am now, and I'm the better for it because I'm grabbing all this wisdom from all these great people. And it saves me time because I don't have to go through what they went through necessarily because
Mhm.
I can grab from their wisdom and shortcut that journey to C8, C10, C12.